freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 456 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearmsauctions.com, where you set the price on guns, ammo, and accessories. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
I'm the other guy, Dan Todd, and our theme today is the politics of law, and our guest is Jerry Sheridan. Jerry is a constitutional conservative Republican and understands that the role of sheriffs, besides keeping people safe, is to serve the people in protecting the Constitution, people's liberties and freedoms, including gun rights. Right? Jerry is a member of the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association, and he is a 2024 GOP candidate for Maricopa County Sheriff.
Welcome back to the show, Jerry, and you are now the actual GOP candidate up against the Democrat candidate when October 9th, I think it is, of 2024 rolls around. People will have a clear choice. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love this radio show because it talks about guns and freedoms and liberties, all the things that our founding fathers gave us when they wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Boy, that is so true. And I don't think enough individual citizens have had civics classes that they really understand, how profound our Constitution and Bill of Rights are, what purposes they serve, how we can use them to make intelligent decisions about hiring elected officials. And the sheriff's position is a key area to kind of open that conversation, because I don't know that enough people understand exactly what a sheriff is. It's not just another law enforcement officer. It is a very specific role that the sheriff plays. Can you kind of dive into that for us?
Yes, absolutely. I get that question constantly. Hey, Jerry, what's the difference between a police chief and a sheriff? And, when somebody asks me that question, I realize we're not educating people. And these are smart people involved in politics are asking me this question.
It's true.
So, the number one difference between a sheriff and a police chief is the sheriff is an elected official. And the sheriff is the only elected law enforcement official in the country, if you think about it. And
Yes.
there's about 3,300 sheriff's offices in the nation. So it's critical that people understand the sheriff really is their first line of defense and their last line of defense against the tyranny of government. And a lot of people don't know what that word is, but maybe we could talk about that in a minute. But the sheriff, being an elected official, only reports to the people. The sheriff doesn't report to a bureau. The sheriff doesn't report to the board of supervisors. Now, yes, the sheriff is relying upon them to fund the sheriff's office so they can do there's two things a sheriff does. Number one, it protects people's civil rights, constitutional rights. And number two is to keep them safe. Okay. And the sheriff's office does that basically in two ways. To keep the safe part is we run the jails. the Maricopa County Sheriff jail system is 75% of what the sheriff does. The other 25% is your typical law enforcement function that a normal police agency would have. You know, patrol, detectives, special investigations, and those kinds of things. But in the Arizona Constitution, the role of the sheriff is enumerated. And then in Arizona Revised Statutes 11441, the duties and responsibilities of the sheriff. And the first one is to keep the peace. So when I become the sheriff, I will call my deputies peace officers because that's what we're supposed to do. And the second role is to take people before a magistrate for a crime. Okay, so what that means to me is we enforce the rule of law. And the rule of law is very simple. We hold people accountable for their criminal activities. And that's what a sheriff does. Arrests them, takes them to a magistrate. And then the third thing, and this was very relevant in 2020, we haven't had so much of it yet. That is to suppress riots and affrays, right? Yes. And so those are the first three of the duties of the sheriff. And then it goes into maintaining a posse, keeping the jails, attending the courts, serving civil process, and those kinds of things, which are additional duties that a police department doesn't do.
So that's interesting, Jerry. And so it brought, I have 1,000 questions for you, but so protecting our Constitution, enforcing, and giving everybody, making sure that our Constitution's not stepped on. I see that on the Republican side, it seems like more of that than on the Democratic side. They seem to be more let the Constitution go. So maybe you could tell me what's the difference between a Republican sheriff and a Democratic sheriff.
Okay. Because that's going to be the decision in October, right?
Right. It's going to be either Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, absolutely that is. And again, I'll go back to, you don't hear Democrat candidates talking about enforcing the rule of law, holding people accountable. And look what the Democrat county attorneys or district attorneys do. They pick and choose what laws they're going to enforce. And that's crazy to me.
Yes.
Because, the rule of law means everybody is accountable for their actions as long as law enforcement holds their feet to the fire. And that's what I will do as your sheriff. Okay, so that's a key distinction. The other thing you don't hear Democrats talk about really is the Constitution protecting people's civil liberties and freedom. And they do it on occasion, but they bastardize what the Constitution really says. And a good example of that is, again, I'll go back to 2020, when governors mandated mask, closing restaurants, churches, parks. Remember that? And
yes, I do.
Those were all Democrat-run cities with Democrat police chiefs, run by the city manager who reports to the city council. But there were some sheriffs that did not enforce those, and I was very clear on that when I ran in 2020. But a good example I could use is Sheriff Mark Lamb from Pinell County. Yes. And he did not enforce any of those rules. Republican sheriff. We had a Democrat sheriff here in Maricopa County. They actually set up a hotline for people to snitch on a restaurant owner or a pastor that was keeping their church open. And they actually arrested people for keeping their restaurants open. And that is the difference between what a Republican would do under those circumstances, protecting people's constitutional rights, and a Democrat sheriff that would not, that would follow the herd.
Exactly. And our gun rights are under attack constantly.
Mhm.
And so if you have a sheriff that's just, oh, so willing to just play so nice with any new federal,
Red flag laws.
right,
Yes,
infringement or
good.
regulation or whatever.
Red flag laws are another perfect example. And we even had a Republican governor here that liked the idea of red flags, but they
Ridiculous.
violate a person's Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, 10th Amendment, and probably the 14th, and also the due process.
Yes.
And so it's blatantly unconstitutional, and I would never enforce red flag laws. And
Red
as a
flag law.
member of
Go ahead, Jerry.
right, as a member of the CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriff Police Officers Association, I've been endorsed by its founder, Sheriff Richard Mack. And if you remember Sheriff Mack, he was the sheriff in Graham County during the Clinton administration, and they had the Brady bill, and he stood his ground and said, no, I am not enforcing the Brady bill. Of course, that wound up the United States Supreme Court. And that led to a great decision written by Justice Scalia, God rest his soul, who said that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and the federal law enforcement cannot tell the sheriff what to do. And that is a key issue that I believe in. Now, most people, and even sheriffs, Republican sheriffs, don't understand that issue. But the CSPOA, and there's another one, the American Sheriff's Association is also behind me. And they are trying to educate sheriffs of their duty and responsibility to protect the citizens, their citizens' liberties.
Mm-hmm.
And, good example of, and I know this is working because in Albuquerque, do you remember when the governor declared Albuquerque to be a health zone, because of the gun issues, and mandated that nobody can carry a firearm in Albuquerque? Well, the sheriff there in Bernalillo County, he stood up and he said, Governor, you don't have that authority to circumvent the Second Amendment of the United States in the Bill of Rights. And guess what? He was a Democrat.
Whoa.
Wow.
So, yes. And so some sheriffs are educating themselves as to protecting constitutional rights of his citizens.
Thank goodness for
Now,
that.
it's rare that a Democrat did that, but in
Yes.
Minnesota, the Republican sheriffs, remember when there was a couple of years ago, the governor there was going to take everybody's, AR-15s away, and you can't have AR-15 semi-automatic rifles.
Yeah.
Well, you know me, that's a big deal because I have, don't tell anybody, but I have like 4 submachine guns myself, plus I think I have 5 ARs, different platforms. But so this is a big issue with me, and especially here in Arizona, because we're on the verge of becoming another California. We have a liberal Democrat governor. We have a liberal Democrat attorney general. And the Republicans only enjoy a 1-seat majority in the Senate and the House. I mean, that's very fragile if you think about it. So this election cycle is critical for people here in Arizona and we have the overwhelming numbers, by the way, the registered numbers as Republicans.
We do. If we would use our strength at the ballot box, right? People just have to show up.
Hundreds of thousands of people Republicans that got mail-in ballots didn't vote in 2020, didn't vote in 2022. So there's a big push with the state party and the county Republican Party to make sure that we get people to vote. And that's critical.
And as a Republican, registered Republican, you need to make sure that you get your ballot, because that could be a question too. But I am tired of selective constitutional people that when it's convenient for them, then they'll use the Constitution. It has to be a full time. Do you realize how many laws we could get rid of if we just used the basic Constitution?
It's so true.
And
think about this for a second. When the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they had just got done fighting a war because of the tyranny of the British government over the colonies, right?
True.
And so they built in a weak federal government
Mm-hmm.
and strong states.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this is supposed to work. But guess what? Now we can look at things today, and we know the federal government, the omnipotent federal government, rules over almost everything we do. And that's not what the intent of the Constitution was in the founding fathers. It was states' rights. And
Yes.
Justice Scalia, in basically in writing his opinion with the Sheriff Mack case, pretty much said the same. And the problem is fighting that at this point, because the federal government has so much money, it's so powerful, and they're intimidating people. Look, President Trump. They tried it with me and Sheriff Arpaio, and they came after us for doing what the federal government gave us the authority to do.
Yes.
And it was funny because the federal district court judge said to Sheriff Joe and myself that we got bad advice. That was his comment.
Yeah. So Jerry, are you saying
Bad advice.
are you saying that you will stand up against the federal government if they try to pass some unconstitutional laws in Arizona?
Absolutely. That's what it means to be a constitutional sheriff.
Okay.
To have the guts to do that. And the thing about me is I've already spent 40 years at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. Got a great retirement. I'm doing this because I want to bring the Sheriff's Office back to some semblance of what it used to be, where people were happy to go to work in the morning. They had pride in the fact that they worked for the Sheriff's Office, and we were protecting people's constitutional rights. I know there's a group of people out there that said we were violating them, but that's a whole nother 2-hour show.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing this. And Stacy says, don't say this in public. So I'm not, I'm just telling you. I don't care if I get reelected. I am not making a career out of this. I am not, I don't consider myself a politician. Now, I know technically I am, but I'm a career law enforcement officer. I'm a career deputy sheriff. And I am not looking for another elected office to go to. I just want to be the sheriff. 2 terms, we'll see at the end of the second term. But right now, as I'm sitting here, I'd like to be the sheriff 2 terms. It's going to take me a while to turn things around after the 8 years of a woke Democrat leadership at the sheriff's office.
Right.
It's 1,500 employees short. I don't know if you saw it in the East Central yesterday, but there was a big article about all the deaths in the county jail system. And I've been beating this drum for a year and a half. They've averaged about 39 deaths a year in the county jail system since they took over. Now, as a comparison, when I was running the jail system for about 18 years, we averaged 7 deaths a year.
Wow.
And you can see that there's a big difference. And I thought that was 7 too many.
Yes.
We had one of the lowest suicide rates. The NCC, the National Correctional Health Commission, said that we ran one of the best jails they'd ever been in when I was running that jail system. And right now, that system is on the verge of collapse after 7.5 years of Democrat leadership, or lack of leadership. Lack of leadership.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to have 2,200 officers. There's a little over 1,000.
Wow.
It is bad, and people are dying in the jail system, and suicides and drug overdoses.
I was going to ask you, what is it? Is it violence? Is it,
Well,
self-harm?
violence too. Violence too. In 2022, in a period of 6 weeks, they had 5 murders, and basically what it was is a drug war in that jail system.
Oh my gosh.
And the gangs killing each other to fight over the drug war in this. And my thing was, and Penzone's gone now. Thank goodness he quit a year early. And they let the inmates run that jail system.
Sounds like it.
They give them tablets, like an iPad. And if they assault an officer, you know what kind of punishment they get? They get to put in a cell by themselves with an iPad. Now, I don't
Oh
know
my
about
God.
you, but that's not too much of a punishment.
No, to me, sometimes I
Absolutely.
wish
So-
somebody do that to me.
Right.
So
Exactly.
So Jerry, a minute ago you mentioned that you even way back then you guys were accused of stepping on constitutional rights, and
Mhm.
you're always going to get that. It's just like
Right.
we have a constitutional right to go out and protest, but when the protest becomes a destroying property, it's no longer a peaceful protest. They called them peaceful protests with the fires and everything. And if you look at that, that was every one of those cities was a Democratic ran city. I don't know of any, and I could be wrong, I don't know of any protesting that was not peaceful that was ran by a Republican.
Well, and here we have Phoenix, which is our largest city in Maricopa County, which is our largest county. And so if we had, a Democrat-run city and a Democrat sheriff, and then all the unrest that most likely is going to occur at the next election, because that just seems to be the cycle we're in,
Or basketball game
or basketball,
or whatever,
right?
Right.
So
So
who's going to come in and bring calm and bring protection for the citizens and for, the property that's being destroyed and burnt up and, on and on. We need a constitutional sheriff, but go on, Jerry.
Right. And so we had an example of that in 2020. We had a Democrat mayor. We had a Democrat sheriff. Let's take Scottsdale, for example. Okay.
Right.
But this happened in Phoenix also.
Mhm.
And I know because we've got calls from deputies that were assembled in the field force, which I started, by the way, when I was the chief in 1995. And basically train deputies in dealing with large crowds and civil unrest. Okay, that's why I started that program, about 30 years ago. So what happened was the Democrat sheriff assembled all the deputies in downtown Phoenix and in Scottsdale, but never deployed them. And neither did the city of Scottsdale Police Department. They were, according to what I heard, the police chief was told to stand down. Meanwhile, they're rioting in Fashion Square, causing millions of dollars worth of damage. And the deputies were assembled at the McCormick Railroad Park, just a few miles away, and they were never deployed. And so how this works is very simple. There's a case back in the late 60s during the Vietnam unrest at ASU. The sheriff then was Cal Boyce, and he had his deputies out there, and they were rioting on the ASU campus, and the Tempe Police Department was there. And he told the Tempe chief, you've got 10 minutes to deploy your people and stop and suppress this riot and affray. And if you don't, I'm going to send my deputies in and we're going to take care of it. And he said, you can't do that. You can't do that. I'm this police chief. And he said, watch me. And he says, if you get in my way, you're going to jail first. And so what happened? They didn't deploy, and the deputies did, and they took care of it, and they stopped the craziness. And that's how it's supposed to work.
Yes.
Now, it's 2024 now. I think we're a little bit more civilized, but the basic concept is there. It is the sheriff's duty to do this. And if it offends somebody in the process, well, I'm sorry, but the public safety is like one of the things I mentioned, at the beginning of the show, is something that the sheriff has to do. It's one of his duties.
Absolutely.
I have to, being the sheriff of of Maricopa County and the Scottsdale Police Department not answering the call when they were riding Fashion Park. How do they answer to the people that own those businesses and say, why didn't you come here and do what your job was to protect me? How do they answer that?
I don't know if you can. The way I would like to see it work is I'm there to help Scottsdale do their job.
Exactly.
That's
Right.
the way I would like to see it.
Right.
If they're doing their job.
And so the police chief, not great guy, he lost his job over.
Mm,
And the way I understand, he was told to stand down. It wasn't his decision.
right.
But you know, everybody needs a scapegoat. Everybody needs to be able to blame somebody for their screw ups.
That's
And
the
I think that's what happened with him.
But that's the disadvantage of the city's police chiefs, is that when the city council tells them to stand down, they have to stand down or they lose their job. A
That's right.
sheriff,
Well, he stood down and lost his job in this case. So,
Wow.
and he was only like a year away from retirement too.
yeah,
Oh my
Really,
gosh.
it was terrible what they did to him.
Bless his
Yeah.
heart. Well,
Yeah.
I want to know, when you win as our next Maricopa County Sheriff, as a constitutional sheriff, what do you see is going to be the biggest issue that you are facing? I mean, we've touched on a lot of different things that a sheriff is responsible for, that intersects with. We're probably going to have a flare up of things right around the election. But we've got a border issue that is an ongoing situation. I mean,
Right.
there's so much. But what do you see as your biggest issue that you're going to face when you are our next sheriff?
Right. Is staffing. And
Mm.
there's two components to that. There is a, a continuing mass exodus of employees, good,
Mhm.
trained, um, honest people that don't want to work under the Democrat regime and have left. Thousands of people have quit, and experienced detectives, deputies, detention officers, communications officials. You know, somebody that answers the 911 call, it takes about a year to train them. And so they're at a skeleton crew. There's 1,500 vacancies, and I cannot do my job protecting people's safety and constitutional rights if I don't have the deputies
Mhm.
out there doing it. So the first thing is it's about leadership, and I'll get to that in a second. So, you know, the second thing is recruitment, and I have a plan to recruit. There's a recruitment budget. The sheriff's office is not using it efficiently, and they're not really doing any recruitment the way it needs to be done to bring people into the organization. So those are key issues, but it all relies upon leadership. And I'll use an example, two examples. The military is unable to fulfill their quotas. Now, I said that at a speech a couple months ago, and I had a Marine stand up, and he said, the Marine Corps did. I said, okay, I stand correct. Well, you know why? The Marine Corps has great leadership, and people know that. People don't want to work for a weak commander in chief. And I think most of us listening and watching can realize that we don't have a strong commander in chief in Washington, D.C., right? And so the other thing is, many deputies here in Maricopa County quit here and went to work for Pinell County Sheriff Lamb because he's a strong leader.
Mhm.
And they lost money to do that. And some of them lost $20,000 to $30,000 to do that
Wow.
because he is a strong leader.
Mhm.
And that, I believe, and I believe me, I've been in this business for 40 years. I grew up, my dad and my uncles were New York City cops, got a master's degree in organizational management, blah, blah, blah. My opinion is very simple. There's been a lack of leadership in law enforcement across this country, that people are afraid, leaders, chiefs, sheriffs are afraid to stand up for what's right and for what's right for their people.
Mhm.
And so that's why there's a problem with the low staffing numbers in law enforcement across the country.
Mhm.
It's not because there's a lack of young people that want to get into law enforcement. I talk to them all the time. They just don't want to work for somebody that's not going to support them when they do something. I just read something yesterday in USA Today where this woman that had a pot of boiling water and was getting ready to throw it at the police officer standing very close to her, and he shot her because he felt for his own safety. You get a pot of boiling water in your face, that's going to cause severe injury. So he did what he did in a split second. They're charging him with homicide.
Whoa.
Now that's the problem. That's the problem why young people don't want to get in the workforce. That's
Mhm.
why it's important to have your Republican sheriff,
Mhm.
rule of law, and your Republican county attorney, Rachel Mitchell,
Mhm.
so we can work together and Rachel can work with the other 25 municipal police agencies in this county
Mhm.
to work together. So officers, deputies, state troopers don't have the fear of doing something and thinking that if I do something, that hesitation can cost
Yeah.
them their lives.
Absolutely.
Eh, Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow.
So
So what do you say about the border? Like how does a sheriff impact when you've got border patrol that is, I think, basically being paid to be either babysitters or liaisons into the country. I mean, that's what it
mhm.
looks like anyway. And the ICE director is there even one right now? I mean, you never hear anything from them. Like, what does a sheriff, what would you be able to do to help in that arena?
Okay, I'll tell you what I did do and what I will do again.
Mm-hmm.
I did do as the chief deputy. Maricopa County is not a border county. It
Mm-hmm.
is um, north of the Mexican border. Our southern border, what I consider, is I-8
Mm-hmm.
down by Ila. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was the chief deputy in 2010, I put teams of deputies out in the desert to fight the cartels, the
Mm-hmm.
human smuggling, child sex trafficking,
Mm-hmm.
and the drug trade. And
Mm-hmm.
they were out there on the mountaintops with spotting scopes, tracking equipment, all this, chase vehicles, and we made a huge impact on
Mm-hmm.
the drugs that are coming into this county and the sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And so a week after I left in December of 2016, so it'd be January 2017, current sheriff or administration took those deputies out of the desert, and there's been nobody since. There was nobody there when I deployed those people in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And you guess what? The Border Patrol started to come around. They started to help and enforce, because our focus is on criminal illegal aliens. As a law enforcement agency, that's our focus. And it's very clear we have the authority to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the Border Patrol was there and they could do their job in the people that we couldn't deal with and take into custody. The other thing that we did was I put officers in the jail system in the booking area and under 287G authority, which was cross-trained by ICE, and they had ICE credentials. So they were actually ICE agents when they were doing their function in the jail system and identifying all the criminal illegal aliens, and we turn them over to ICE, and we'll continue to do.
Mm-hmm.
And people have to remember these are criminals. They're
Mm-hmm.
not the poor guy that came up to the United States because his family was poor and they couldn't survive. It came here and every Friday they send their money back to their family. I'm not talking about those people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about people that come here that commit crimes, and we've all seen them on the news,
Yep.
the heinous crimes that they've done, the murders and sexual assaults and all that stuff. it's really sad, and that there's some element of our government that doesn't care about this.
Right.
It's crazy to me. So let me ask you this question, and we do need to start wrapping up for time. When we talk about the border, and I appreciate you specifying that even though Maricopa County doesn't actually touch the southern border, that we are impacted and we have to take it seriously, stuff that comes across the border. Is a border issue and the fentanyl issue, are they synonymous? Are they the same thing? Or as a
Absolutely.
sheriff who's dealing with the fentanyl issue, is it somehow separate and different? Or are they
No.
really so interconnected?
Well, about 80% of the fentanyl that comes into the United States comes in through Arizona. And the Vico Valley, and on my website, I have a video that I did with Sheriff Lamb a few months ago that talks about this. And we're standing there in the Vico Valley, just south of I-8. You can hear the trucks going by. There's a big sign that the federal government put up, and it said caution, illegal alien drug smuggling corridor. What? And they're not doing anything about it?
Like a deer crossing.
And there's nobody out there? So yeah, it's like a deer. Yeah, exactly. And so that's here in Maricopa County. And, 6 people a day die in Maricopa County of drug overdoses. 4 of those are attributed to fentanyl.
Wow.
And again, the large problem the sheriff currently has in the jail system is the fight over the drug trade and the fentanyl overdoses. And there's still, to this day, even though they're trying to make headway, there's still people every day that get wheeled out on a gurney, an emergency room for drug overdoses, 2 to 3 a day. It used to be 3 to 5. So they cut it down a little bit, but people are still dying in custody. And that's unbelievable to me, because if you can't control the drugs coming into your jail, how the hell are you going to be controlling the drugs coming into the county? And see, that's where my experience comes in. This is the difference between me and the Democrat candidate that I'm going to be facing. I spent 40 years at MCSO, 20 of those years in executive leadership position, and 12 years specifically running the jails. I know that system. I oversaw the design and construction of 2 mega jails, the 4th Avenue and Lower Buckeye Jail, and the infrastructure that goes with it. And we averaged about 8,000 inmates, 9,000 inmates. We were serving 30,000 meals a day. When we built the new kitchens the size of a freezer of a football field. So I'm just kind of giving you how big this system is. And then I spent the last 6 years as the chief deputy overseeing the entire function of the sheriff's office. And the first 17 years I spent in the patrol compound. So, I've been through it all. I've got the experience. I've got the education and the training to go there the day one and make a difference. If the voters in this county hire, and this is really what this is right now, this is a job interview. That's the way I looked at running for sheriff since January of last year, 6, 7 days a week. This is a job interview. But if the voters of this county decide that they want the inexperienced Democrat who was with the police department, probably doesn't know the difference. Well, if he watches this show, I've probably educated him about the difference between a sheriff and a police chief. It will take him 2 years at least to begin to understand what needs to happen. And you know what? Things are so bad now with the sheriff's office. We don't have that time. We don't have that luxury. The voters of this county need to hire the guy that can start before he even gets there, like I already have. I've already talked to attorneys about different issues. I've already have a plan on recruiting. And so this is the difference between me. And again, I'm doing this because it's a passion with me. I grew up at MCSO. I met my wife there. No, she was not a suspect or an inmate. You know, and we don't have time to tell that story, but it's on my website, and I've got a video there about who I am, why I'm doing this.
What is your
And
website, Jerry?
yes, it's Sheridan number 4 Sheriff 2024.com.
Well, I do want
So
people to go there and spend time and learn more about you. And really, at this time, I feel like I want to tell people to leave your party affiliation at the door. Think about people who are incarcerated, right? That they are also valued and protected under the sheriff of the county. And right now, that's not really happening, right? Under the
no,
Democrat sheriff we have.
and I know there's certain segments of the Hispanic community here that are behind me 100%. And I talked to a mayor of a town here that's mostly Hispanic, and we need you back, because
Mhm.
when you were the chief deputy, you made a big difference in the reducing the level of violence in my
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
And normally you would think, and then, well, then there's the other segment of the Hispanic community that thinks I'm a racist because, we did something about the illegal immigration issue, but it's not real. There's no racism about
No,
it at
it
all.
was
It's
ridiculous what was
about the
going on back
safety
then.
of, yeah. And we were focused on, criminal illegal aliens. At least I was. And
Well,
Absolutely.
I
so um, it's so important for people to cross over,
Mhm.
independents and Democrats.
Mhm.
I hate to say this, but to vote for me, because I will always do the right thing,
Mhm.
whether, and I always have, whether it is beneficial to me or not. And I
Right.
know I made some decisions because that I would be personally attacked.
Mhm.
And I was right. The ACLU, the DOJ came after me because I made certain decisions that were the right thing to do. I could
Mhm.
have very easily not have done it and not gotten the heat, but that's not what a person that you want as your sheriff to be.
Exactly. And when the ACLU, right, when they won't even support our constitutional rights to keep and bear arms, then I have to look at them through a jaundiced lens anyway. So,
Well,
well, I want to bring up something too that
mm,
you asked Jerry what his most important thing to get done and he said recruiting.
mhm.
But we've interviewed you before, Jerry, and I know that the jail problem that you have in the jails right now is very close to your heart. That you want to stop the amount of deaths that are going on in the jail, and I know that
right.
that's close to you and that's important to you. And it's a responsibility of the sheriff to make sure that the prisoners are safe.
Mhm.
Um, I think that sometimes the jails are a little too comfortable, but I know that you'll do a job to make sure that the people that are in jail are not don't have to fear their life while they're there.
Right. And the big issue is they're at less than 50% staffing.
No.
And
Wow.
subsequently, one of the big reasons is you get drugs coming into the jail because the officers are overworked. They don't have time to properly search people coming in and out. When they took down Tent City, that was a big problem because it gets a little complicated. So I'll make it as quick as possible. Is when the work release, work furlough inmates, the trustees all lived in the tents. So they didn't live in a hard facility. And the people that live in a hard facility want the people that are outside the jail coming in to smuggle in for them. And if they don't, they'll get them or their family. And it was a disaster to take down Tent City. So I
Mhm.
have a plan to bring some semblance of Tent City. I don't know what the new name is. Maybe you could think about it, help me, because it's Tent City is not the right word because I won't be able to put tents up. But an alternative housing, so we don't mix the outside inmate population with the ones that are stuck inside, and
Yes.
and that's how the drugs come in. They get smuggled in by the inmates and lawyers and the mail and sometimes employees, very rare, but that does happen too.
Yeah.
And so, you've got to manage all these things. And again, the experience that I have blows away anybody that wanted to run for sheriff, including the appointed sheriff that's there right now. He never worked in the jail system. So I'm the only one that's going to be able to make a difference from day.
Fantastic.
And the employees are behind me.
Very
And
good.
that's why I decided to run in the first place, is because they asked me to run.
Very good.
And because when I retired, I didn't think, after 40 years, I'm done. But,
Well, there's a
I guess you're
calling
never
on
really
your heart.
done.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
a
Jerry,
calling on your heart, and I appreciate that you said, this isn't like, I just want to have another title
No.
in my, belt notch or whatever. You really have a calling, and we need somebody who has a heart to serve, has the experience you have. So I appreciate that. Dan, I'm sorry I
No,
interrupted.
it's okay.
you.
So Jerry, tell everybody how they can support you and help you with your venture here.
Okay. So Maricopa County is 9,224 square miles. It's got 4.6 million people. It is a huge race. I need funding, campaign funding. So if somebody can contribute $25, $50, the maximum 6,650, I'll take that too. And just go to my website, and there's a link right on there. You can donate, or if you want to write a check, you can. The PO box is on the website, and please do that, because I've got 1,400 yard signs. Street corner signs out there now. I'm really worried about tonight, because we're supposed to have this big monsoon storm come in, and it's going to damage a lot of those. And there's about $50 a piece when you get in there. And I need to put more signs up. I need to do some radio, some targeted internet advertisement. All of this is very expensive, and the Democrats fund their candidates very well. The Republicans tend not to. So it's absolutely critical for all those people listening to send me a little bit or a lot, depending on what you can give. And know that I don't buy lunches for people with it, or myself. I don't use it to put gas in my truck. And I've probably driven about 15 to 20,000 miles. And I've got a big Chevy dually pickup, and I pay for that gas. I don't want to use somebody's money that they're good enough to contribute to the campaign for anything other than to get my message out. And now it's critical, because that short period of time, October 9th, is going to be here before we know it. That's 2 months away, right? A little over 2 months away. And I need that money now to begin to do the things I need to do to get my message out, not just to the Republican Party, but to the independents and the Democrats, because I'm targeting them also. Because a constitutional sheriff, that title should not scare anyone. All 4.6 million people in this county. It is there to protect every one of them, whether they voted for me or not, whether they're of the Republican Party or not. That's irrelevant to me. It's all about the rule of law and keeping people safe.
Absolutely. Jerry Sheridan, 4th Sheriff. Sheridan, number 4 Sheridan. Let me say it again.
Sheridan, number 4 Sheriff, 2024.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for all you do. When you are our next sheriff, please come back and let's talk about the task at hand.
And let's do that. And, maybe I'll show you my latest machine gun too.
Awesome.
I know we didn't have much time today. And you're supposed to come out here and shoot that Thompson, as soon as it gets cool.
Okay.
As soon as it gets cool. Yes.
Right.
Any minute now, I hope. All right. Thank you again so much. God bless.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I really like him. And the main reason I like him is because he is all about the Constitution. And that's everything I do. Everything, every vote, every vote I make, every endorsement is gonna be because they believe in the Constitution and follow the Constitution.
Absolutely.
There was one thing the sign that says a drug corridor.
Oh my gosh.
That is because we
What an
have weak
insult.
leaders.
Yes. What
It
an
is because we have
insult.
weak leaders. Could you imagine? I mean, this area of town is okay to rob because
Yeah.
there's no police in this area.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever even designed that sign should be put in jail.
Right. The fact that you know that
That-
it's going
right.
on, why don't you fix it?
Right.
How about
You
that?
don't have a sign that says deer crossing. I think, okay, I got to be careful because the deer might cross.
Mm-hmm.
So now I got to go down the road and see a sign that says illegal drug trade.
Right. Crazy.
It's crazy. Anyway,
And doesn't that tell people that want to buy drugs to go there? I don't.
yeah, right. Is there people that say, okay, come on. So anyway, we ran that interview a little long.
We
So
did.
we probably need to talk about a couple things like, if you're out shooting and, you're sweaty and you just kind of like,
Yeah.
you
Where are you
just,
going with that, Dan?
well, I'm going to you. That's what you do.
Trying to set me up for the segment, and I am trying to throw it back at you.
Not
We
gonna
are
do it.
talking about lockedingrip.com. Our good friends Shelly and Brian Hill have created this awesome product. It is a no slip, better traction, heightened connection for safer, faster shooting. It is lockedingrip.com. Get some for yourself and your favorite shooting buddy. Also, if you like to support American jobs on American soil, making American-made products, you are going to want to accept this invitation from Dan and I. There's an invitation-only shopping club that this is your invitation to join. Go to patriothousehold.com/GFR. Stop shopping at those big conglomerate stores because they use your dollars to suppress your freedoms and mine. And when you shop at patriothousehold.com/GFR, not only are you supporting American jobs on American soil, making American made products, you're supporting us and what we do. We get a tiny portion of every dollar you spend to support the work we do. And the Second Amendment Foundation gets a tiny portion to support all the lawsuits that they are filing all across this nation to protect your Second Amendment rights. So from your laundry soap to your skincare to your delicious snacks and even amazing roast beef, steaks, hamburger, beef products delivered directly to your door. You shop online, it shows up at your door. It couldn't be any easier than that.
We even order our teeth paste there, don't we?
Or teeth paste, you are correct, because we don't just wash or
Brush one
brush
tooth.
one tooth, right?
So it's teeth paste.
For quality and convenience and supporting what we believe in, our values, patriothousehold.com/GFR. Thank you again so much to Jerry Sheridan for Sheriff. Thank you to all of our amazing listeners and viewers all across the planet. If you want to go back and watch any portion of this video or any of our videos, you can go to YouTube, GunStreamer, or the smartphone app called OpsLens. Be sure when you get there to like it, subscribe, hit the notifications. All of those things convey to those platforms that you value this information, gives us a hedge against cancel culture. And if you want to listen to the audio only version, because maybe you're out on a long bike ride or you're mowing the lawn or something like that, go to our website, GunFreedomRadio.com, click the on demand tab, and
Binge listen to your heart content, my darling.
well done, sir. If you want to see photos, bios, and links to all of our guests, including Jerry Sheridan for Sheriff, then please go to the guest tab. It is a tremendous resource. It's ever building database of subject matter experts. And when you spend time there, we don't hate that. All right. Until next time, we're going to pray for this nation. We're going to pray for anyone in a leadership position. We're going to pray for our elected officials. See, I got around Dan, right? Because he always says elected officials are not our leaders. We're the leaders of them. They represent us. And what about the ones that we're just not super happy with? We're going to pray for them too?
Boot 'em.
Boot them with your vote. That's
Yeah.
true. But we can pray for them. Maybe especially we'll pray for them
You
because
forgot
they'll
one
be
to pray
sad
for.
when they lose their
You
job.
forgot one to pray for.
Hmm.
pray for the majority of Republicans in
Mhm.
Arizona to get off their butt and vote.
Yeah. I
Just
agree.
go vote.
Just go vote.
Overwhelm them. Overwhelm them.
Mhm. But make an informed vote. I mean,
Yes.
now we're past the
Oh,
primary.
don't just pick Republican.
Right. But now that we're past the primary, and we're kind of in that position, the time to have vetted who is a true constitutionalist versus somebody with just an R next to their name,
Yeah.
that's before the primary. It is, we're sitting in the studio on August 6th, 2024. So primary's already passed. Everyone that you're voting for now, your only choices are a D, an R, or an independent, possibly a libertarian. So, but please make an informed vote and get out there, as Dan said. All right, until next time, be good to each other. Have a great week, and God bless.
Bye-bye.